You ever have that feeling, listening to something, maybe the news, maybe just scrolling online, and it just feels a bit off?
Yeah. Like you're being nudged somehow.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Nudged. You feel like the words are pushing you somewhere, but you can't quite pinpoint how it's happening. It's unsettling
Yeah.
that maybe you're not fully in the driver's seat of your own thoughts.
Oh, absolutely. It's incredibly common now. I think we're just swimming in information, narratives everywhere, and telling the difference between, real insight and some pretty slick manipulation. It's tough.
It really is. Like walking through fog, yeah. And that's exactly why we wanted to do this deep dive today. Think of it as like a user's guide for navigating that fog.
A user's guide. I like that.
Because honestly, when I first read the material we're going to talk about, it felt like someone just handed me the keys, the instruction manual for the underlying code of conversation. So the plan is to give you the tools, the ways to spot and defend against some really sophisticated language tricks.
Our main source for this journey is this fantastic Substack post. It's called A User's Guide to Neurolinguistic Defense. It's by Peter Duke, author, journalist, researcher from thedukereport.com.
And Duke's motivation, it really grabbed me. He starts by mentioning this reader note, someone saying, basically, it's good when people realize they're being manipulated because someone points it out.
Right.
But it's better when they see it themselves. And Duke just runs with that. It's like that old saying, teach a man to fish,
All right.
but for language. He wants you to learn to hear these patterns yourself.
That's the core of it. He wants the average person, us, to understand how words get weaponized and, crucially, how to build defenses. Not to become manipulators ourselves. Definitely not.
No. It's about protection. Self-defense,
Yeah.
linguistically speaking. Protecting yourself, your family, your friends.
Exactly. Building that shield so you have real autonomy in your thinking.
So here's the promise for today. We're going to unpack some basics of what's called transformational grammar when it's used as a weapon, and then introduce some core defense moves. And honestly, understanding this stuff makes critical thinking, well, it makes it much harder not to do.
Yeah, it kind of flips a switch. You start noticing things you didn't before. You can process information faster, more deeply, maybe without feeling so overwhelmed.
Right, because you have a framework. Okay, let's dive in.
Let's do it.
So first up, that term, neurolinguistic.
Yeah.
Duke himself says it sounds kind of jargony, like something that makes you want to, tune out.
He does, yeah, a jumble of syllables.
But it's actually pretty straightforward, isn't it?
It is. At its heart, neurolinguistic is just about how language and your mind interact, how words shape thought, how speech reflects mental patterns, and importantly, how communication influences perception and behavior.
So the wiring between words and brain function, basically.
Pretty much. And then you get neurolinguistic programming, NLP. In this context, it's a psychological technique, using conversational language in specific structured ways to reframe beliefs, to change minds.
By spotting patterns.
Exactly. By recognizing specific word patterns that reveal someone's underlying beliefs, their sort of mental operating system, and then using those same patterns tactically to shift things.
Okay, this is crucial. Duke really hammers this point. This is not the computer science NLP, right?
Yeah.
Not AI, not chatbots.
Definitely not. Zero computers involved here. This is purely human to human, how we use language to influence each other, a whole different ballgame.
And how does this differ from, say, just regular persuasion, like making a good argument?
Great question. Traditional persuasion usually relies on, logic, reason, evidence, maybe some fancy rhetoric. You build a case.
Right.
NLP, though, it doesn't really care about the logic of the argument. It focuses almost entirely on the structure of the language, the patterns, how phrases and sentences are put together.
The Legos. I love that analogy Duke used.
Yeah, the Legos. He says think of sentences put together with different colored Legos. Specific patterns are different colors. And by watching how someone stacks their Legos, you can see how they build their reality, their frame.
So, can anyone just learn this? Like learn the Lego patterns and start influencing people, even without really knowing the topic?
Well, Duke suggests the patterns themselves are surprisingly simple to learn, yeah. Once you know what to look for, that doesn't automatically make someone a manipulator, but the potential, it's there. And yes, you don't necessarily need deep expertise in the subject. You can bypass the content and go straight for the structure of their thinking. That's partly why, he argues, people can be trained in it relatively quickly.
Okay, so structure is key. And that leads us to Noam Chomsky.
Right. The big name in linguistics.
Most people know him for manufacturing consent, right? media's propaganda. But Duke makes this really bold claim. He says Chomsky's linguistic work, way back in the 50s with syntactic structures, that work actually provided the framework for weaponizing language.
It's a very provocative link he draws, yeah. Suggesting Chomsky inadvertently armed the military-industrial complex he so often critiques.
How? What's the connection?
It comes down to Chomsky's concept of deep structure. That's the underlying basic form of an idea or sentence, the core meaning that exists in your mind before you even find the words.
Like a blueprint.
Exactly like a blueprint. So the cat chased the mouse, and the mouse was chased by the cat. Different surface structure, same deep structure. Cat does thing to mouse.
Okay.
And this deep structure, it holds everything, memories, feelings, experiences. It's vast, so vast, in fact, that we have to condense it to communicate.
Right. Duke's example about describing your day if you tried to include everything.
It would take longer than the day itself, yeah. You'd never finish. Condensation is absolutely necessary.
So we have this massive deep structure, and we have to shrink it down to talk or write.
Precisely.
Yeah.
And that shrinking process, that condensation, is where John Grinder and Richard Bandler came in during the 70s. Grinder, interestingly, was ex-Army Special Forces intelligence. They took Chomsky's deep structure idea and basically modeled how we do that condensing. They identified the patterns, and they called their model the meta model.
The meta model.
Yeah.
And it has 3 core processes.
3 core processes that we all use constantly whenever we communicate: deletion, distortion, and generalization.
We delete info, we distort things, we generalize.
We have to. Like Duke says, we just have more ideas in our heads than can fit in a sentence. He's doing it, we're doing it right now. It's unavoidable.
We can spot how someone is deleting, distorting, or generalizing.
Then you can ask questions. Questions designed to dig back towards that deeper structure, to uncover what was left out or twisted or overly simplified.
It's like getting conversational X-ray vision.
Kind of, yeah. Seeing the edits and understanding those edits, those patterns, is the key to the next piece. How they can be used to make someone vulnerable.
Okay, so this is where it gets maybe a bit uncomfortable. Duke talks about NLP practitioners, or hypnotists as he calls them sometimes,
Yeah, it's a provocative term.
using questions specifically to create self-doubt, to induce cognitive dissonance.
That's the mechanism, yes. Cognitive dissonance is that really uncomfortable mental state when you hold 2 contradictory beliefs at the same time, or when your actions don't match your values.
Like an itch you can't scratch.
Exactly. Your brain needs to resolve the conflict. It wants consistency.
And Duke's example is perfect. Someone says, all women are fickle. That all the universal quantifier is the weak spot.
It's a huge opening.
So the NLP person just asks, really simply,
All of them.
just that. And boom. It forces the speaker to reconcile their sweeping statement with their actual deep knowledge, which almost certainly includes women who aren't fickle.
So what happens then? They backpedal.
They might say, okay, well, maybe not all, but a lot. Or they might double down defensively. But either way, that moment of forced reconciliation, that internal wobble, Duke says in conversational hypnosis, that's like putting someone in a light trance.
Wow. So they become more open to suggestion. Highly susceptible, yeah. And that's when new ideas get introduced, often disguised as more questions.
So back to the fickle women example.
The hypnotist might follow up with something like, doesn't that fickleness make them more interesting, though? Or even more directly, so if fickleness makes them interesting, maybe it's truer to say, all women are interesting.
And the person might actually shift their belief from all women are fickle to all women are interesting.
Without even realizing how it happened, potentially, the reframe bypasses conscious resistance because they're busy resolving that initial dissonance. It's subtle, but powerful.
But this only works if there's trust.
Right.
You can't just walk up to a stranger and do this.
Absolutely critical point. The foundation for all of this is rapport, that sense of connection, trust, feeling at ease. Without rapport, the questions just bounce off. They feel aggressive or weird.
It's the lubricant, as Duke calls it.
Exactly. Makes the conversation flow, lowers defenses.
And one technique for building rapport quickly is the yes ladder, or mere agreement frame.
Yeah, it sounds almost too simple, doesn't it? But it works. You get someone saying yes to a series of small, easy, agreeable things first.
Like the weather's nice, you're having a good day,
Yeah.
that sort of thing.
Right. It builds a pattern of agreement. Psychologically, we like to be consistent. So after saying yes, 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 it becomes harder to suddenly say no to the bigger thing later.
I'm thinking of every sales pitch ever now.
It's definitely used there. But Duke gives the television pundit example. Love that phrase, television.
Tells you what to think, yeah.
So pundits, he mentions Carlson on one side, Maddow on the other. It doesn't matter the political leaning. They often start their monologues hitting points their audience already strongly agrees with, one after another.
That's the yes ladder.
That's their sophisticated yes ladder. It gets the audience nodding along, builds rapport instantly, and makes them way more receptive to whatever the pundit suggests or concludes later on. They're essentially priming the audience.
And Dukes says you can literally count the agreements.
Yeah, he challenges you to try it. Watch pundits opening, count the yes moments. He claims it's so formulaic it becomes almost funny once you see the strings.
Okay, so let's quickly recap those meta-model patterns again. Deletion.
Deletion is leaving important stuff out. Forces you to assume or guess, like saying, they messed up. Who's they? What was the mess up? You don't know.
Got it. Distortion.
Distortion is twisting reality, presenting an opinion or assumption as fact. She's ignoring me because she's mad. Maybe she is, maybe she isn't, but it's stated as truth.
Okay. And generalization.
Taking one specific thing and blowing it up to cover everything. People always let me down based on maybe one bad experience, or all politicians are corrupt.
And these three, deletion, distortion, generalization, they shape everything. How we misunderstand things, how we get stuck in limiting beliefs.
Or how we're guided towards a certain narrative.
Yeah.
Spotting them is step one in defending against manipulation.
Okay, so universal quantifiers, all, never, are easy to spot. But Duke says the real heavy hitters, the mother of all mind control patterns, are cause-effect and complex equivalence, often used together.
Right. And he credits NLP instructor Matteo Morelli for identifying these as the go-to patterns for politicians and pundits.
So cause-effect, that's saying A makes B happen.
Pretty much. A distortion linking two things causally, often simplifying reality. Duke uses the Palisades fire example. One report says caused by climate change, another says caused by kids with fireworks.
Each one assigns blame differently.
Exactly. And ignores other possibilities, like maybe it was arson, Duke suggests. The language frames who's responsible.
Okay, and complex equivalence.
That's saying two different things are the same thing, that they mean the same.
Like the examples he gives. Protesting Gaza equals anti-Semitic. Or voting for candidate X means you hate group Y. Or wanting border security means you're anti-immigrant.
Right. It equates an action or stance with an entire identity or hateful motive, shutting down nuance, creates an instant emotional reaction.
And the really powerful ones, when they combine them, cause-effect complex equivalence.
Yes, the hybrid. This is the master pattern, it says. Doing X causes outcome Y, and doing or not doing X says something fundamental about you, your morals, your values.
This is where the COVID vaccine example comes in, right? That messaging was potent.
Incredibly potent, according to Duke's analysis. Remember the line, get the vaccine because it will prevent you from getting the disease, stop you from spreading it to others.
That's the cause-effect part. Vaccine leads to health outcomes.
And you don't want to be responsible for killing your grandmother.
Boom. There's the complex equivalence.
Right. Not getting the vaccine means you don't care about grandma. Or worse, you're responsible if she gets sick. It links the action not just to a result, but to your core identity, your morality.
It bypasses rational thought completely. Goes straight for the emotions, the values.
Exactly. Your duty to protect loved ones. It makes resisting feel like a moral failure. Regardless of the actual scientific data or personal risk assessment, it embeds the belief in your identity.
Wow. And Duke argues this pattern is everywhere.
He lists several examples he sees fitting this mold. COVID being safe and effective. Safe, meaning no harm. Effective, meaning it stops the disease entirely. Darwin's evolution, presented as a simple, finished fact. Climate change being only about human CO2. Even calling oil and gas fossil fuels, implying a specific, limited origin from dinosaurs.
So these patterns are constantly shaping how we see things, who we blame, what things mean.
Constantly. In politics, media, even just casual conversation, we're swimming in it. But now, hopefully, you can start to see the currents.
This leads to another really punchy idea from Duke. Knowing is the enemy of thinking. That really makes you pause.
It does, doesn't it? Challenges how we usually value knowledge.
So what's the distinction he's making?
He argues we're all born with the capacity to think. To use logos, as the Greeks called it, our ability to reason, discuss, figure out truth. But often we substitute knowing for thinking.
Knowing is like collecting facts, memorizing stuff.
Yeah, storing prepackaged ideas. It's efficient, like using a key. The key works, you don't think about the lock mechanism every time. We need that efficiency for daily life.
Otherwise, we'd never get anything done.
Right. But thinking is the active process of using that logos, that critical faculty, to determine truth for yourself. Knowing is just storing what others have already thought, and you can know a lot without doing much thinking.
And he says whole professions are built on this knowing.
He points to several: game show contestants, bureaucrats following rules, police enforcing protocols, academics repeating theories, journalists relaying official statements, even doctors or lawyers relying heavily on established procedures. The emphasis is often on recalling and applying what's known, not necessarily questioning it.
And the military's I mentality.
Exactly. Designed for obedience, coordination, suppressing individual thought for unified action. A knowing population, he argues, is easier to manage, to control.
He even suggests modern education for like 200 years is focused more on knowing than thinking.
Why? His argument. Thinking populations are much harder to mind control. It's easier to convince knowing people to, say, fight a war if a cause-effect complex equivalence, noble cause, has been established.
Or to accept things like paying taxes for deficit spending because we know the system works. Or accept candidates we dislike because we know elections are fair.
Right. People who know are good for the status quo, he argues. People who think, they ask awkward questions. They might resist.
And when people do think, they often get shut down with thought-terminating cliches. TTCs.
Exactly. Those little phrases that just kill the conversation, the linguistic stop signs. It is what it is. That's just how things are.
Signals, don't think about this anymore.
Precisely. And the weaponized versions are even more potent. Epithets like racist, homophobic, anti-Semitic, any kind of denier.
Like climate denier, Holocaust denier.
Duke calls these linguistic weapons because their effect is to shut down thinking. They label, they isolate, they end the discussion through social pressure, not logic.
And his favorite TTC example. Occam's razor.
Yeah, but misused Occam's razor. Not the actual philosophical principle about fewer assumptions being preferable.
But when it's just used to say, the simplest explanation wins, end of story.
Exactly. When it becomes a slogan to dismiss complexity without real analysis, a conversational stop sign that shortcuts the hard work of thinking, it just declares a winner by default.
Okay, another subtle one. Nominalizations.
Ah, yes. Turning verbs, actions, processes into nouns, things. Decide becomes decision. Govern becomes government.
How does that stop thinking?
It makes the action seem finished, static, permanent, often out of anyone's control, like when someone says, that's the policy.
Right, it hides who made the policy, why they made it.
Makes it feel unchangeable, so you don't ask, who decided this, or does this policy still make sense? It blocks inquiry, turns an active process into a solid object you can't question.
Okay, now we're getting into the grand strategy. Duke calls dichotomies, the either-or choices, the fundamental linguistic weapon.
Yeah, in the arsenal of epistemological warfare, he doesn't mince words.
The goal is divide and conquer. Break a problem into two sides. Get people to pick one.
That's the core strategy, he argues. It simplifies, it distorts, it generalizes. Think Democrat versus Republican, cowboys versus Redskins. It seems natural, but
he argues it's constructed, not emergent.
Right. He gives us historical examples: Russian peasants overthrowing the Tsar, the Fed being created, WWI starting, Hitler rising, Israel's formation. He says these are presented as simple narratives, often dichotomies, but the reality was far more complex and potentially engineered.
He even says Marx made up capitalists and communists as opposing sides.
That's his claim, that this deliberate splitting into two is thousands of years old. It is the system, in his view. Even the two-party system, he suggests, might not be best for democracy, but it's great for oligarchic control.
And forcing these either-or choices leads to double binds.
Yes, giving people two bad options. The classic lesser of two evils, which Duke says always leads to evil.
Creates paralysis, societal schizophrenia.
That's his term. It creates conflict, breaks down the system, and then allows a third way, maybe the intended way all along, to be introduced as the only solution.
Wow. Okay, what about axioms?
Axioms are those chunks of knowing packaged as wisdom. Pithy quotes, self-evident truths, like, from Stoicism, the obstacle is the way.
Duke sees a command and control element here, encouraging, do what you're told, don't think.
He contrasts the Stoic approach, accept the obstacle, use it, with a strategist like B.H. Liddell Hart. Ask questions, find a way around it. One stops thinking, the other keeps going.
And we're surrounded by these axioms, right?
Totally. Nice guys finish last. Money talks, it is what it is. Fake it till you make it. Boys don't cry. Time heals all wounds.
They feel true, but they skip context.
They compress experience, present assumptions as facts. They're mental shortcuts. Duke's bottom line: living by axioms isn't thinking.
Okay, nearly there. Squishy words.
Words with fuzzy definitions: liberty, freedom, consciousness, love, hope, justice, science.
Why are they dangerous?
Because everyone pours their own meaning into them. Think hope and change or make America great again mean totally different things to different people.
Maggie A meaning nostalgia for one person, racism for another.
Exactly. And this ambiguity, Duke argues, is exploited. Institutions, monarchies, universities, the Vatican have historically manipulated word meanings to maintain confusion and frame control.
It's like linguistic magic, making simple things mysterious, needing experts to interpret.
That's his analogy, wrapping truth in mystery via wordplay.
And his example of liberty versus freedom is key.
Huge. Most people use them interchangeably. But liberty, he explains, is freedom granted by someone in power over you.
Which begs the question, who has that power? How did they get it?
Right. Especially when, as he notes regarding COVID mandates, unelected officials made huge decisions impacting liberties. It forces you to think about the source of authority.
Okay, last tactic, baffle gab.
Using super complex language to sound smart and shut people down. Overwhelm them with jargon so they just give up and assume you know best.
The verbal smokescreen.
Exactly. But Duke sees a defense here: LLMs. Like ChatGPT.
How so?
He uses them himself to check his own work, see if ideas are original, cut through jargon. He thinks they can level the playing field, help anyone detect BS without needing deep expertise. If the AI can't parse it, maybe it's just baffle gap.
So wrapping all this up, Duke's big conclusion:
that most of our fixable problems are actually constructed with language. Laws, ideas, norms, they're all words.
And if they're made of words?
They can be remade with words. Language is the problem and the solution.
But just voting isn't enough if people are stuck in knowing mode.
That's his challenge. We need to use these tools understanding deletions, distortions, cause-effect, TTCs to ask questions that nudge people out of knowing and into thinking, into using their logos.
And that core axiom again.
We can think our way out of not knowing, but we cannot know our way out of not thinking.
You have to engage the thinking brain. You can't just rely on stored knowledge when facing manipulation or complex problems.
That's the essence of it.
And his final call to action is incredibly simple, almost startlingly so.
We can save the world by asking the right questions. Puts the power right back in the individual's hands, doesn't it?
It really does. Wow. Okay, so we've gone through a lot. NLP, deep structure, the meta-models deletion, distortion, generalization, cognitive dissonance, rapport, the yes ladder, the big ones, cause-effect, complex equivalence, knowing versus thinking, TTCs, nominalizations, dichotomies, axioms, squishy words, baffle gab.
It's a full toolkit for linguistic self-defense.
But just to reiterate, the goal isn't learning how to manipulate, it's learning how to not be manipulated. To see the game.
To defend your own mind, think critically, and maybe help others do the same. It's about empowerment.
Duke talks about stepping out of the system, not giving up, but going meta, seeing the whole structure.
Yeah, chunking up, seeing the bigger picture, and maybe, just maybe, seeing the humanity and people on the other side, realizing they might be caught in the same linguistic traps, victims of the same epistemological warfare.
So after all that, the big takeaway really is about asking questions.
It seems to be. Starting to observe language differently, applying these tools.
So the final thought for you, listening right now, what questions are you going to start asking?
This is terrible. This is one of the worst catastrophes in the world.